Hi all, in this video I'm going to add some brief comments on each of your poster drafts. I'm going to be looking at your work in terms of the design and composition techniques that we've been focusing on, which you can see just to the right of my screen here. Rule of thirds, hierarchy, scale, balance, flow, and eyesight lines, alignment, contract, negative space, proximity, and repetition. I am not going to go through each of those for each of your posters. I will be highlighting some on some posters and some on others. I would like you to watch all of the video so that you can learn from what I'm talking about in other posters and perhaps apply that to your own. You'll also be able to see what what other students in the class are doing in their work. You will see along the top here that there's quite a few to get through, and I'm only going to be spending a little bit of time on each so that the video doesn't become so long. These are in no particular order. They're just in the order that I clicked on the email, the share email that you sent me. So let's get started. You'll also notice that I have made duplicates of each of your posters so that if I make any changes in here, it does not apply to the actual one that you were working on. Reduce the size. Okay, history of space exploration. I really like the contrast between the white font and the dark background. We've got a nice layout through here. The one thing that I would recommend is either reducing or removing entirely all of this body text. Recall that these are posters that are designed to be hung in public spaces, and we want to make sure that the important things are readable. So that would mean increasing the size of the subheadings and also the location of the museum where the exhibit is going to be held. I do like the image that you've chosen. Oh, that's a really good one. I do wonder what would happen if we pop this one over a teeny little bit to get this guy a little bit over to the right a little more. But otherwise, I do like the simplicity and the cleanness of this design. But like I said, I would reduce or remove or significantly reduce the size of the body text and then increase this size. And otherwise, I think that you're off to a really great start. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The evolution of car manufacturing. I'll make this a little bit bigger. One thing that I would like you to focus on, and this goes for everybody, is making sure that everything is aligned nicely. You'll notice if I zoom in further that this G is closer to this right border than the T is over here. And instead of having this structure, this font, this heading aligned to the left, you might align it to the center. That way, the Canva automatically centers the text, the box in here, and you can see now that we're completely centered. That is if you wanted everything to be centered to this in the center here, or if you wanted it all the way to the left, make sure that you are getting the space correct. These are much too close together. If what I would recommend, if you were going to have them in a list like this right here, is instead of having each one an individual text box, make one larger text box and have them all in there, and then you can adjust the line height, the line spacing in that paragraph. I like the metaphor that you're trying to create with this arrow indicating development, which is like the evolution of it, but these look like little clipboardy type things, and we can't really get a good feel for what's going on with them. They're really small, and I think we've got too much negative space here. This is much too small. Remember, these are going to be hanging up. This is too big. This is too small. I do like the idea of having these different versions of cars throughout history, and maybe we increase it's hard to get to this one here, the sizes of them as we're going through, just to I'm not really sure. Maybe this could be moved around. I don't know. You could always change the color of that, you know. But I would work on trying to make it so that these are a little bit bigger and not so clip arty, just sort of floating around in here. And the fonts are kind of bland here, and the colors don't have enough contrast between them. You know, if you're going to be getting this up and you want to make sure everything is nicely in line. When we're working on our posters, the key with text is that alignment, is being extremely precise with it. And if you don't have a mouse, this can be difficult, I know. What is helpful is to zoom in really close, and then you'll see that little red line show up, so everything is nicely in line together. You want that precision, excuse me, with your alignments. And it might just be that you use one of these cars, not all of them, and maybe this needs to be removed. I'm not really sure. But I do like the idea of showing some sort of progression, but I'm not sure it's working right now in this design. Here we have a string of memories, waist beads in West African culture. Very cool concept. I like how you've tried different designs. I'm not really sure I like this one. I like this one a little bit better. And I do like the color scheme. This one is a little hard to read. Make sure you're using something that allows for high contrast. This is a little bit close. In the final, for the final poster assignment, you're going to be using a contrast checker to make sure that it's readable. And I don't know how well this color will pass. You can see how much more readable these are. Here, I would like you to just get your line spacing a little bit tighter through here. Maybe this yellow rather than that yellow in there. And then I'm not sure about we need the body text here. This one sort of gets lost. I would rather have one up there with this subheading up in this area. But I do like the idea of using this sculpture and the body beads around their waist. I do like that quite a bit. Remember that you do need to have the address of the museum and the SJU logo on there as well. And I think last year students added a date. So you might put a date for when this goes for everybody, a date when it is. So I like what you're working with. I like you're trying to frame everything with the sculpture, but this is very hard to read. You can imagine it's going to be hard to read on a poster, and so I don't necessarily think you need it. I would rather have this subheading, or I'm sorry, this blurb in there too, someplace. A brief history of coffee. I like the font that you've chosen. It's very cafe type font. These need to be in line. These are not aligned at all. The use of the coffee mug is great, though this seems to be just placed here randomly. We've got a cut off flower over here that doesn't seem to work. We want to make sure that that's full. This is also just randomly placed in here. There might be room for it. You might have room for it up above, or whatever this image is. I see. You're sort of hamstrung here with this, the mug that you have chosen, because it's got the other stuff in it. I like the idea of having the mug, but you might find one that does not have the iPad or the phone and whatever this thing is over here, I'm not really sure, so that you can place it further down in the corner, which will give you some more room up at the top for everything everything else. Okay. Maybe this could still stay down there. So I would look for another mug because I like obviously it makes sense. History of coffee, it makes sense to have that kind of mug. But because you've chosen an image that has a lot of other things in it, it's excuse me, it's getting in the way of the text. It's not allowing for clean negative space, which is what we are hoping for. But by creating a big mug, we're getting nice scale. And also, please notice that your borders, you've got a white border over here on this side, and you do not have one on this side. So I would find a way to extend it all the way across. You don't need those white borders if you don't want them. History of surfing, a very cool image. This content here is impossible to read, so we need to figure out ways to get rid of this. I would take out this body text completely. Use this negative space up here for, use the negative space up here for the subheadings with the topic areas of it. And then we need the address and the SJU logo here. But this is a great start. Notice that your borders are not the same width all the way around. You want to make sure that you are being precise about that. So make sure you're popping that in, getting those borders correct. Evolution of art through time. I really like these cave paintings that you've chosen. This is much too small. This is a poster. We want it nice and big. We want it readable. This text is not readable. This orange is too similar to the colors that we're seeing in here. I'm not sure what other colors would work, but you could use this eyedropper tool and you can hover over and maybe one of these darker colors. Oh, that's not good at all. I can see where you're having some trouble with this. You're trying to find some colors that are within. You might need to just making the font bigger. Breaking this over 2 lines could help. Really making it big because you have so much room here. So I think that you could potentially make this nice and large. Obviously not that big, but you can see what happens when we make it a little bit bigger. Make the scale really, pop. Get our line spacing up in there so we bring it a little bit closer together. And then if you needed to, you want to make this really readable. This is the key. See, just white just works great right here. And then you can start moving things throughout. You could start putting things in different locations. Here, this picture should just, it doesn't really work well with the white background. You might crop it if you want the white. Crop it down a little bit so it's not so large. That helps a little bit. You might round the corners a little. That's up to you. I see we've got this iStock thing going on here. I want to get that out of the way. Make that bigger. And it looks like we have a white border on the side here that we need to get rid of. And I think having the blurb, we were missing the blurb that you had somewhere. Maybe it's on a different document. Having a blurb that summarizes. This is the blurb. We need the subheadings. So this blurb should be spread out as if it's a blurb. And this could be down below. It could be other places, but make it blurby. It looked like a list before, and it's a paragraph. So you want to make it look more like a paragraph. And make it pop. I think this is still not enough weight. The white just stands out. It just stands out. So I think that something, just a little bit of change makes it looks a little bit better. We get some subheadings in there and we'll be all set. This is a very unique design. This is because you've chosen these arches, which is an interesting choice. Oh, no stroke, wait. Don't know if this can be thinner. But because you've chosen these arches, we're asking for a very center design. It wants to be centered throughout it. Notice, however, that these left arches are, that the arches themselves are not centered on the page. We want to make sure that it is completely centered in there. Okay. Also, make sure that your typefaces are centered. If you're putting these little rounded background text, you're going to want to make sure that it's centered in that as well. And that all of these come through as a centered in the center. Okay. Because this is a very centered area here. You might, this design is highlighting the text over the image, which is fine. That's interesting. But if you wanted to, another option would be to make these images bigger. I'm not sure why you chose this option. It's a very unique design. That's great. We want to put this in here as well. Maybe make that a little bit smaller. But like you could see how a centered design aligns with this structure that you have at the bottom. This is sort of the determining factor of that. So it's interesting. We've got two coffees, and you can see two very different takes on the coffee. One that is highlighting, this cafe surround area. One that's more like a cafe kind of menu. This font is particularly cafe-like, but I would remember we're looking at a poster here. I'd like you to make it bigger. That's too big. And this one could be a little hard to read at smaller font size. You could see that. So you might need to choose a different one for this subheading, or I'm sorry, the blurb. Maybe something more menu-ish, something that allows for easier readability, because it works very nicely for a big heading, but a blurb in this area here is a little bit more difficult. Same with this. We don't have the address for the museum. We need that. These are not properly aligned to the center, but it wants to be aligned to the center. And this SJU is just sort of hanging out here by itself. You might need to find a more appropriate place for that. So I think this is a good concept. It's very cafe menu board like, and just seeing if we need that. I think it's a nice touch. We might want to crop it a little bit more. Like you've already cropped it some. Maybe not. No, it's too small. You're right. But we do need to have these all aligned to the center. They're not currently. This is another case where if you're going to be using, this is going to be like a list, make one large text box rather than three small ones, because in a large text box, everything will automatically become aligned. I don't like this font. I'm sort of looking at other fonts. I'm glad you chose this one for the heading. This one might be better, whatever this is. Beliza might be better for the blurb and the subheadings, because this is a nice font that's written down here. Okay. This one, when I saw it for the first time, it just made me really happy. This little Pokemon guy. That's great. He should be moved over, or she, or it, whatever. I don't know anything about Pokemon. But let's get this guy or this Pokemon into the rule of thirds on the poster. So now it's in the bottom left-hand corner. And that's just a little bit more pleasing. I'm going to move it a little bit. Yeah. I can imagine the line and the line. And then the line, if you can imagine it, is coming right through here and then across. Let's just double check by clicking on. You can see line coming directly down through here and then right across the eyes. It could be down a little bit lower. That creates a much more pleasing location than it was before. But this stuff here is just a mess. Unfortunately, we want to give us something big. Give us, Pokemon are fun. They're bold. They're out there. Get a nice color. You can use the eyedropper tool. Maybe pick something out of the Pokemon. That doesn't work because of the background. But you could always add effects to this, like an outline. That would work, or a glow. Oh, I like the glow with this one. Look at that. That really pops. And you can see that's much more fun than just a flat black. Now, I don't know if that would work for these subheadings here. This is a blurb, so this should be blurbish, not just a paragraph. And this would go up with it, because that is, and then these need to be in some sort of alignment. Pokemon is a really popular designed item. So you want to make sure that your poster is representing and honoring the design of the artwork, of the design of Pokemon as well. So really think about how you're aligning things. Alignment is extremely important. You want to make sure everything is in there. That's why we use the grid system to help with that process. This is probably a little bit too big. Pop a date in there. Make it so it's very, very excited. Our Mr. Pokemon. Like that. All right. But you can see how just changing the font and thinking about effects, and this is, other people could do this too, not just you, can really make a change. Timeless Beauty. Oh, I should have duplicated this one. This one I really like. I'm not sure where you got this cartoon, but I like that you're using it. This should be underneath, like that. I don't know if you need this. You don't want anything that says Canva on it. So if you can't find a splotch that doesn't say Canva, remove it. Okay. These are hard to read. You're going to need to. These are grouped. You're going to need to increase the font weight on these a little bit to make them easier to read. See, just by making those bold, that would make it a little easier to read. But how you're going to figure out the location of this, it might be that you bring these up here somehow. They would all have to, this is another example where you should make one text box out of all these and center them. And then this could be over on the left-hand side, since it goes with that, right? And then you would sort of make those the same size. Something like that. I do like this graphic that you found. And I appreciate that you matched the color just by making it a little smaller. But we have to. Actually, that crops that out, makes it a little bit bigger, and I actually think it pops a little bit more. The key is going to be getting this subheadings. But I do like this quite a bit. This needs to go Maybe we make this just a little bit bigger. I don't know, but I like this version better than this one. But it's a cool image. It's just hard to read everything. So I like the two different approaches that you've chosen. So when I see this, I'm not really thinking I'm not thinking fast food. With fast food, I'm thinking French fries, I'm thinking hamburgers, I'm thinking chicken, that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering if you might choose something that's a little bit more associated with that. And then this is just too small. That's too hard to read. I do like how you're trying to create the main subject in the right rule of thirds column. And then we've got this negative space. That's really very nice. When we're doing the poster, we don't really need the colon. But I do wonder what it would look like if we had, the golden arches just by themselves, not just a flagpole. Something really, really this is clearly not working. Maybe not. I don't know. So it's up to you, but I think that this is too small, too hard to read. This is much too hard to read because it's basically white on gray, which is no good. And these are a little bit too hard to read because of the font and the color that we've got going here. So I would work on that a little bit. You're sort of hemming yourself in. Try some different images you might have already. I just don't know it, and see what you can come up with. But like I said, this is too small. I'm not sure if you need it completely, or if there's room for it. Or maybe this goes up here, and these go down below. But you can cut this down. It doesn't have to be so long. See, I think that works better than that. And it might be that this font, this Playfair display, is more effective than Shirkhand. So play around with that and see how it's going. History of the NBA. Okay. I do like this. We could take this off of here for now. I don't know if there's a way to add a note onto this, but if there is, we could just sort of pop that in there. You could just make that really small. Really, really, really small. Make it as small as you can. This is just sort of clip art stuff. You don't need it. We've got this. This basketball takes away from that basketball. We don't need to duplicate it. Hue, history of basketball exhibit. Why is this hue? I don't know what that is. Is the exhibit only going to be, look at that. See when we just sort of change the size around? Now, the question is, are we not going to be covering the WNBA, or are we going to be covering European? It looks like international expansion. That wouldn't be the NBA. So I don't know if we need that NBA. That might be a little bit restrictive in terms of what's going to be covered. Here's another example. All these should be in one text box. Opening next week in Philadelphia. Make sure there's a space in there. I like that you have the date. We do not need that. You see, just getting rid of that removes the clutter a little bit. You can make that a little bit bigger even. I like the orange, it goes with the basketball. That's really nice. It's great that it's fine that you didn't put the blurb. It does really not much room in here. Again, I would just take out this NBA. Unless you're going to have NBA, WNBA, European League logos, I don't think it's necessary. We do need, however, the museum address and the SJU logo. And you can see just what making this bigger, how that really is really nice. Makes it nice and bold. You want to be that in your face. These are just a lot of fun. I duplicated the record because I prefer that one. I really am impressed by how you made this, the record, the turntable, the arm, the needle head. That's really just very, very well done. This spacing is weird. These should be all just be one text box. I'm not sure why you made those two. And I'm wondering if you're able to move this as a group up a little bit, and we can get some of the oh, these are fun also. I didn't see these. It's really impressive that you made this by yourself with just shapes that you found, this boombox. Really, really impressive. This one is also a lot of fun with this microphone that you found. With this one here, this one might even be the most effective of all of them. I didn't scroll down enough. You have room to put the subheadings in with the history. You can move these slightly up. And you could put those subheadings for the... I like this font that you found, whatever it's doved. So very, very cool. You could make this a little bit smaller. Oops. And you could put those subheadings in there. This might be the most effective of them. Although I do want to point out just this is very cool. And if you moved it up a little bit, you would be able to fit in some of those subheadings as well. So really, really fun approach to this one. All right. So this one here is a bit of a bit disorganized, I guess I would say. I like how you're thinking about the big baseball and using that as your primary object. But these are just, there's no alignment at all on this page. Everything is very haphazardly placed in various locations. So you really need to work on your alignment. If you're going to be aligning things to the left like that, we need to get it on the left. Make it fill the space. Let's get that subheading in there underneath. I think that would be nice. And then we really need to align these. Make them all one box. Align them properly. Get things lined up. If this is the place where you got this image, you could just make that really small. Pop it down at the bottom. You don't have to worry about that. But we need to have things much more organized. We can't just throw things up there the way you are and hoping they'll stay. Get, the line spacing all needs to be the same. Like with the other ones, get these all in one text box so it has the same effects or letter spacing, line heights, and so on. This one is nice. I like this image that you've chosen. You've sort of framed it with this other text, which is a very interesting idea. It's just this is much too hard to read at the size that it is. It's too small. And the gray that you've chosen is too close to the gray in the background. So, excuse me, you have a couple of choices. You can change the background color, make it a little bit lighter, or you can change these colors. This also one needs to stick out a little bit, and you might find some effects like there. Just even putting a little glow in there helps. You might want to do that. But I like the idea that you're going around this. It frames it very interestingly, and that's really very nice. It's just the font is too hard to read, and especially because there's a lack of contrast going on in here. So I would play around with that a little bit. I would put this subheading introduction. It's a subheading that came with the ChatGTP work that we've been doing, but introduction means nothing on a poster, so you could get rid of that one completely, and then you could move this up here, and then you just have the other ones. Oops. And you want to make those a little bit bigger. You could center this underneath, make it a nice size, and then have SJU underneath, because this one again wants to be aligned in the middle. So give that a go and see what you think, and change those colors in there. Okay, this is really a lot of fun, and I like the way that you've taken the utilized. I don't know how you did this by breaking the photo down into different boxes, or I'm not sure how that happens, but it's very cool. I would try to center your letters in the boxes more. Oh, you've got there's all sorts of stuff going on there. You notice how this one is more centered. Make sure the letters are centered in the boxes. It's a very cool concept. I like how you've broken this all down. I do like this paisley kind of background thing we've got going on here, potpourri. Very nice. This alignment needs to be at work, so if you want, I don't know how we're aligning things, but if you want it all aligned, this is what the grids would be good for. Well, you've got two things going on top of each other again. This is a little hard to read. That's going to be a little hard to read. I don't think you need this. This seems a little excessive. In terms of the other one that you've designed, this one I think is just beautiful. I like, again, the background that you've chosen. I like how you frame things. You've got this decorative elements in here. You've got basically 3 columns for the 3. This rule of thirds is coming through across over here. You might make this bigger, this one, so that you can read this text a little bit more. Right, so it's not so small. Align this with the Francis J. McGuire thing. I don't think this needs to be so big. Early origins could be on one line, or if you're trying to make it broken down. But I do like the way that you've structured this. It's a very pleasing. The colors are pleasing. It's got this really calming feel, which I think journaling does. And I like how you've presented it with the 3 column layout, and then this coming across the bottom, rule of thirds. Very nicely done. There's really nice contrast between the bright white and notice in here that there is a drop shadow going on, which helps it stand out. That's something that other people could do in their designs as well. So really very, very nice. Of the 2 about journaling, I think I prefer this one. It's just a very pleasing. And I also like the idea that you flip from portrait to landscape to give you that option. Other people can do that too. That's perfectly fine. The history of golf, origins in Scotland, golf today. This is great picture. I like the idea that you're using it here. Notice that your border is not even, and that your text is completely unreadable because it's white. So I would go back and look at what I said about some of the other ones. You really need to make these readable. I don't think you need the body fonts, the body text in here. In fact, I would remove it completely. And try to figure out a way to make it so your content is completely readable. You don't even need this black border any longer in here. You could just sort of fill the space with the golf ball image. If I can click on that again. All right. You might find another picture that is a little that will allow you to this is a great picture to use because it scales very nicely. But even just transforming it like this, we pop that directly on that lower rule of thirds. See how I'm doing that? That completely changes the layout and gives you room to have your content up in this negative space and in this area over here. So really think, and that's this idea of scale and hierarchy. Scale, particularly, we're scaling the image to make it so that we've got negative space all around. And then we're a brief history of golf. Let's get this font white. It pops better. If you want a drop shadow or something in there to make it really stand out, that would be good. I'm not sure about this sans. It doesn't look like you've chosen a font beyond the default Canvas sans. You've got some very cool, like this is a very sophisticated font, whatever this is, Copperplate Gothic. That might be more golfy. Maybe you can see how the font just gives this a little bit more sophistication. This is a much more sophisticated kind of font versus what we have up here, which is just whatever. This, we've got something. It's regal. It's more regal, and which golf is one of those aristocrated regal kind of sports. So really think about the typeface that you're using, and we can see the difference just between that, and the positioning from here to here. This is just sort of sitting there. There's no rule of thirds work going on. So really think about how you're positioning those things on the page. Remove these body text. You don't need it. Keep the blurb. Make one text box for your subheadings and position them nicely throughout. And you do need the museum address and the SJU logo. These are really interesting designs. And I really, really like how you've created lacrosse and from sacred tradition to global sport. I do really like that. You've got that in this left rule of thirds. It's working really nicely. And then the other 2/3 of the document are taking advantage of that negative space that is created through that. Very, very cool. I would reverse these. I put I make them bigger first, and then I would put them above the museum address. Now the issue with, and there's this one down here, the concern with using indigenous subjects is not to make sure that we're not even getting close to merging into stereotype. This is more of a stereotypical representation of a Native American chief, and I would be wary of putting this on the poster. I'm not sure who the artist is. It could be an indigenous artist. In that case, that sort of changes things a little bit, but we don't have that. I'm not sure we need this part of the image. I'm wondering if it would work solely with these three gentlemen playing. But it might be that they come down below. It works better for them to be lower. And then we would move this stuff up to the top. And they're sort of resting down below over here. You might even find a way to incorporate a contemporary lacrosse player. So that might mean cropping out one of these two and putting another one in, or just focusing on this. I think that might even be a better option. And, you know, now that we have it, we can sort of make these bigger. Again, I would put these up top. You know, and you have to figure out the line spacing. So we see if we have 2 rather than 3. So I would just be very careful. These are not, I don't think, stereotypical symbols. I'm not sure where you got this image from, but since they've got their lacrosse baskets, I think that's it's okay. But this one down here, I think, is a little bit more problematic in terms of potentially stereotyping how indigenous chiefs would have looked. Same with these feathers. That's the only thing that why I think that's problematic. This actually this actually looks pretty nice now that I'm looking at this one again. You know, we've got a lot of negative space up here, but that doesn't really bother me. It's just a very clean design. I think that can stand on its own. So I leave that up to you. There it is. But as you can see, that's the last one. Wow, we're almost at 50 minutes here. Please make sure that as you are going through these, that you are paying real attention to the rule of thirds hierarchy, each of these design concepts, because I'm going to be looking at them, as you will see in your final work. I'm going to be assessing how you are applying some of these, and learn from what your classmates have done, what I've been talking about, what you think looks nice, sophisticated. Make sure your alignments are good. Make sure everything is very, very, very precise. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your final work. Okay, take care. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful.